They say he had everything a person could want: a steady life, a warm home, a sense of peace. But over time, that peace began to feel heavy. He realized he hadn't made a single new choice in years. Same road to work, same dinner, same thoughts. One night, he asked himself a question that changed everything. What if the thing I call peace is just fear wearing a friendly face? He started noticing how comfort had turned into routine and routine into control. He wasn't living safely. He was living small. That's when it hit him. The comfort zone isn't protection. It's a prison with nice furniture. There's a strange comfort in staying where things don't change. It's quiet there. Predictable. You know how the day begins and how it ends. The coffee tastes the same, the people talk about the same things, and even your thoughts run the same tired laps inside your head. You tell yourself this means peace. But what if it's not peace? What if it's paralysis that learned to smile? Here's the thing. The comfort zone isn't a place. It's a story your mind tells you about safety. It whispers, "You're fine here, even when you're not." It hides behind routines, habits, and the illusion of control. You think you're resting, but the truth is, you're repeating. Carl Jung once wrote that the mind will do almost anything to avoid confronting itself. And that's what the comfort zone really is. A mirror turned backward. You're still staring into it, but you see only what you already know. The subconscious craves the familiar, not because it's good, but because it's known. The unknown feels like death to it. Think about it. Most people don't stay in unhappy jobs, relationships, or lives because they lack options. They stay because the alternative demands a kind of death, the death of identity, of predictability, of who they've been up until now. The mind would rather keep you in quiet misery than let you walk into that uncertainty. Franz Kafka understood this better than most. His characters live inside invisible prisons built out of bureaucracy, guilt, and fear. They chase approval from systems that never cared about them. It's absurd, but that's the point. Comfort is absurd too. It keeps you busy so you don't notice the cage. And when you finally do, you're too tired to leave. Here's what most people miss. Comfort doesn't make you happy. It just makes you numb. It replaces curiosity with control. It turns, "What could I become?" into, "At least I'm okay." That's the real lie. Familiarity feels safer than freedom. Not because it is, but because freedom demands motion, and motion threatens the illusion that you've already arrived. Nietzsche said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." He wasn't glorifying suffering, he was describing growth. Chaos is just life without the training wheels. It's not danger, it's expansion. But the modern mind has been trained to confuse expansion with risk, and risk with pain. So we stay small and call it wisdom. Let's make this practical. Think about the last time you felt truly alive. It probably wasn't while scrolling, repeating, or waiting for something external to happen. It was when you were challenged, when you didn't know if you could do something, but you tried anyway. That edge, that uncertainty, is where consciousness wakes up. Comfort kills that. Slowly, politely. Naval Ravikant once said, "Escape competition through authenticity." What he meant was that your true leverage, your unique path, can't exist inside imitation. Yet comfort thrives on imitation. It wants you to copy what works for others, not to find what's yours. It's safer that way. But safety is expensive. It costs your individuality. Here's what this really means. Every time you choose comfort over curiosity, you trade growth for familiarity. You're not resting, you're rehearsing your limits. And the more you repeat them, the more real they become. The comfort zone doesn't protect you from failure, it just guarantees mediocrity dressed as stability. There's a quiet rebellion in walking away from what feels safe. It doesn't mean burning everything down. It means asking the hard question, am I truly at peace, or just avoiding the unknown? Most people never ask it, because the answer rearranges everything. But that's where awakening begins, not in chaos, but in the courage to step into it. The comfort zone doesn't start as a trap. It starts as protection. You build it piece by piece every time you get hurt, rejected, or stretched too far. It's the mind's way of saying, let's not go through that again. But here a S where it gets tricky. The mind doesn't know when to stop protecting you. It keeps the walls up long after the danger is gone. Carl Jung believed that what we call comfort is often the ego's defense against transformation. The ego clings to stability because it confuses identity with safety. When things stay predictable, the ego feels in control. But real growth feels like loss. When you evolve, you shed versions of yourself, and the ego doesn't like that. It will rationalize, manipulate, and even sabotage just to keep things familiar. Here's the thing. The mind doesn't love the cage because it's pleasant. It loves the cage because it's known. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar possibility. You can predict your suffering, rehearse it, manage it. The unknown, on the other hand, demands surrender. And surrender feels like death to a mind obsessed with control. Most people think they fear failure, but that's not entirely true. What they actually fear is the loss of identity that comes with change. If you've spent years being the reliable one, the quiet one, or the strong one, what happens when you step out of that script? Who are you then? The comfort zone isn't just about habits, it's about self-concept. It's who you think you are. Kafka's world captured this beautifully. His characters don't rebel against the system, they adapt to it. They file papers, follow rules, and accept absurdity, because rebellion requires imagination, and imagination requires freedom. The tragedy of the comfort zone is that it doesn't just trap your actions, it traps your imagination. You stop asking, what if? And start saying, that's just how things are. David Goggins calls it the mind's governor. Like a car that's been limited to a certain speed, you've been programmed to stop when things get uncomfortable. You tell yourself you're at your limit, but really, you've hit your conditioning. The governor was installed through repetition every time you stopped early, avoided friction, or settled for easy. The longer it stays, the more convincing it feels. Let's break it down. The comfort zone feeds three main psychological needs: control, predictability, and validation. Control gives the illusion of power. You decide when things happen, and that makes you feel competent. But it's a false kind of power, more like a security blanket than a sword. Predictability gives your nervous system a break. No surprises means no threat. But life without surprise is just slow decay. And validation is the trickiest of all. It's how we measure our worth. If you stay inside what others approve of, you don't risk rejection. You also don't risk being fully seen. This is why comfort often disguises itself as responsibility. I'm being realistic. I just need stability. It's not the right time. The words sound wise, but beneath them lies fear. Not fear of failure, fear of freedom. Because freedom asks for accountability. It means you can't blame the system, the boss, the parents, or the world anymore. Once you step outside the cage, you realize the bars were never locked. They were held shut by your own need to feel safe. Naval Ravikant talks about freedom from desire. Not because desire is bad, but because constant wanting ties you to outcomes. And outcomes are the architecture of the cage. When you attach your identity to comfort, you give external things the power to define your inner state. Lose them, and the ground falls away. So you hold on tighter. You build routines not for growth, but for control. And control always ends in fear. Here is what most people get wrong. The comfort zone doesn't protect you from chaos. It isolates you from it, and that's not the same thing. Chaos is where life happens. Growth isn't a straight line upward. It's a cycle of collapse and renewal. The cage interrupts that cycle. It promises peace, but delivers stagnation. You stop dying small deaths, and that sounds good until you realize you've stopped living too. Nietzsche warned against what he called the last man, the person who seeks only comfort, who avoids risk, who mistakes ease for happiness. He said, "They have their little pleasure for the day, and their little pleasure for the night, but they avoid everything that might disturb them." It sounds harmless, but it's the psychological death of potential. The irony is that the more you cling to comfort, the smaller your comfort zone becomes. You start protecting not just your routines, but your opinions, your preferences, your beliefs. The world shrinks to fit your fear. You stop exploring not because there's nothing left to see, but because you've convinced yourself you've seen enough. So why does the mind love the cage? Because the cage feels like you. Step outside it, and you lose your reflection. The mind doesn't fear discomfort, it fears disorientation. But what if that's exactly where freedom begins? Maybe the point isn't to escape the cage at all, but to realize it was never real to begin with. The hardest prison to escape is the one that feels good. The one with soft lighting, a predictable schedule, and just enough satisfaction to keep you from noticing the emptiness underneath. That's what safety does. It seduces you. It tells you that peace means the absence of friction. But real peace isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about learning to move through it without losing yourself. Here's the thing. Safety is addictive because it feels rational. You tell yourself you're just being careful, that you're protecting your stability. But stability and stagnation look almost identical from the inside. You can't tell which one you're in until you try to move. That's when you realize the walls weren't built to keep the world out. They were built to keep you in. Carl Jung once wrote that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. It's one of those truths we nod at but rarely live. We want awakening without disorientation, clarity without confusion, and growth without risk. But the psyche doesn't work that way. Awareness is an unraveling. Every step into new awareness costs a piece of the old self. That's why the mind hesitates. It senses that safety will end the moment truth begins. We live in an age that worships comfort. Every convenience is sold as progress. Faster delivery, fewer decisions, instant entertainment. We've engineered friction out of existence, and yet people are more anxious than ever. Because comfort without challenge creates psychological static, a kind of quiet suffering that builds beneath the surface. You stop struggling, but you also stop evolving. You trade aliveness for anesthesia. Let's make this real. Think about the modern worker who hates his job but stays because it pays the bills. He tells himself he'll quit when things settle down, but things never do. Or the person who stays in a relationship that's emotionally flat because at least it's not toxic. Safety disguises itself as maturity, but often it's just fear dressed in logic. The mind is clever. It will rationalize anything that keeps it from uncertainty. David Goggins talks about this in brutal clarity. He says the brain's first mission is to keep you safe, not fulfilled. That means it will always choose the path of least resistance, the one that avoids pain, risk, and embarrassment. That's fine if you're trying to survive. But if you're trying to live, it's the enemy. Growth demands friction. The body needs resistance to build muscle, and the mind is no different. Here's what's wild: safety doesn't just dull ambition, it rewires perception. The longer you stay comfortable, the smaller your appetite for risk becomes. You start to interpret excitement as anxiety. Challenge feels like threat. Your comfort zone shrinks until even small disruptions feel unbearable. That's not safety anymore. That's dependency. Nietzsche called this the domestication of man. He meant that civilization trains us to trade freedom for predictability. We create systems to protect ourselves from nature, from chaos, from each other, and in doing so, we lose contact with the very forces that made us strong. A domesticated animal might live longer, but it doesn't live better. Its instincts fade, its courage softens, and soon it forgets what freedom even felt like. Naval Ravikant once said that people think they want peace, but what they really want is absence of problems. True peace, he said, is found in the ability to handle problems without breaking. Safety seduces us into thinking peace means nothing happens. But if nothing happens, nothing grows. Life without tension is just slow decay with good Wi-Fi. There's another layer here: social validation. Comfort zones often exist not because of fear alone, but because of belonging. You stay where you are because it's where your peers, family, or colleagues expect you to be. Stepping out means risking not just failure, but exile. That's why the seduction of safety is so powerful. It's tied to love. You fear losing connection more than losing potential. Kafka would probably laugh at how we call this adulthood. His characters worked tirelessly to maintain order inside systems that never cared for them. The more they obeyed, the less alive they became. That's what safety does. It rewards obedience and punishes curiosity. It keeps you in line while convincing you it's for your own good. Here's what this really means. The comfort zone doesn't whisper stay safe. It whispers stay small. It tells you the risk isn't worth it, the timing isn't right, the dream is unrealistic. And because those words sound responsible, you listen. You shrink quietly, rationally, one day at a time. Until one morning you wake up and realize safety has taken everything. Your edge, your fire, your hunger, and left you with peace that feels like silence. But the opposite of safety isn't danger. It's aliveness. It's that pulse in your chest when you're doing something that matters, even if it scares you. It's the discomfort that signals expansion, the chaos that shows you're still in motion. The mind will always prefer the cage because it's predictable. But the soul, it doesn't care about predictability. It cares about depth. So ask yourself, has safety made you secure, or has it just made you still? Because stillness without awareness is just another name for sleep. And most people aren't tired. They're asleep with their eyes open. Freedom sounds noble until you actually taste it. It's not the wide open sky people imagine. It's wind, cold, and exposure. When you step beyond what's familiar, you lose your landmarks. There's no one to tell you if you're doing it right. And that is the real reason most people never chase freedom. It demands responsibility for everything you feel, think, and become. No more excuses, no more hiding behind circumstance. Here's the thing, comfort is easy because it externalizes blame. You can point to the job, the system, the timing, the market. But freedom gives you nowhere to hide. It's raw accountability. That's why so few people actually want it. They want the idea of freedom, not the practice of it. They want liberation without uncertainty, autonomy without consequence. But you can't have both. You either choose control or you choose growth. Carl Jung said that most people don't become fully conscious because it's too painful. To wake up means to see how much of your life was lived on autopilot. The comfort zone isn't just a physical routine, it's an unconscious one. It tells you who to be, how to think, what to want. Freedom strips that away, leaving you face to face with your own mind, unfiltered, unguarded, and demanding answers. And that's terrifying, because what if the answers are disappointing? Nietzsche saw freedom as the destiny of the strong. He believed the individual must create meaning in a world without given order. That's the paradox. Real freedom is not relief from chaos, but mastery within it. It's not about finding a calm sea. It's about learning to sail through storms without breaking. The comfort zone teaches avoidance. Freedom teaches adaptation. Naval Ravikant once said, "A busy mind accelerates time. A still mind slows it down." Freedom is what happens when you stop running from yourself long enough to actually experience life in real time. But to get there, you have to walk through the noise, the doubts, the boredom, the discomfort of not knowing. That's the toll. Most turn back before they pay it. David Goggins calls this crossing the calloused mind. He says, you can't think your way to strength. You have to live it. Every time you push past what's comfortable, you earn a little more clarity. Not because pain is magical, but because it burns off the illusions that safety built. You stop mistaking easy for good and familiar for peace. You start recognizing that every breakthrough begins as something you didn't want to do. Let's make this tangible. The first few weeks after leaving the comfort zone don't feel empowering. They feel like loss. The routines that kept you grounded vanish. People question your decisions. Doubt creeps in. You start to romanticize the cage. But that discomfort isn't failure, it's withdrawal. You're detoxing from predictability. You're rewiring your nervous system to tolerate freedom. That's what growth actually feels like, not excitement, but disorientation. Kafka hinted at this kind of transformation through absurdity. His characters live in systems so nonsensical that the only sane act left is to stop playing by the rules. Freedom begins exactly there when you stop negotiating with absurdity, when you realize that staying safe inside a broken system is just another form of slow death. Leaving doesn't mean you've solved it all. It means you've decided your aliveness matters more than your comfort. Here's what this really means. Freedom isn't a reward. It's a discipline. It's choosing uncertainty over illusion again and again until discomfort becomes familiar. The first few times it feels unbearable, but gradually something shifts. The fear doesn't vanish. You just stop letting it decide for you. You learn to stand inside uncertainty without needing to control it. That's psychological maturity. That's freedom. Most people think courage is a moment, a single act of defiance. But it's really a lifestyle of discomfort. It's the quiet decision to keep moving even when the path disappears. It's sending the email, starting the project, ending what no longer fits, not because it's safe, but because it's real. Courage doesn't remove fear. It just stops fear from being the only voice in the room. Freedom will never feel stable because it's not supposed to. It's alive, unpredictable, sometimes lonely, but it's also honest. You may not know what comes next, but at least it's yours. That's the trade. Comfort gives you certainty at the cost of your individuality. Freedom gives you authenticity at the cost of your certainty. And once you've tasted authenticity, you stop caring so much about being sure. Carl Jung once wrote that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But if you can face it, really face it, you start to see that discomfort is just truth in motion. It's the signal that life is asking you to expand. And expansion never happens in ease. It happens in exposure. So maybe freedom was never meant to feel safe. Maybe it's supposed to feel alive, raw, unpredictable, a little terrifying, but unmistakably real. You don't step out of the comfort zone to prove anything. You step out because you've outgrown the lie that safety is peace. The truth is simpler. Safety keeps you the same. Freedom makes you become. And becoming, with all its chaos, risk, and uncertainty, is the point of being alive at all. Here's the question. What's one comfort you've outgrown but still hold on to? If you're done living small, comment below "I'm stepping out." Remember the man who built his own cage? He spent years polishing the bars, convincing himself they kept him safe. But one day, he finally touched the lock and realized there wasn't one. The door had been open the whole time. That's the thing about comfort. It never forces you to stay. It just hopes you never question it. So maybe freedom was never about running away. Maybe it's about walking out quietly, deliberately, and not looking back. Because the cage was never real. Only the fear was. If that hit you, you already know what it means. You're not stuck. You're ready.